we started putting the bearings into this Honda Rancher 420. It's a 2015, and we got the bearings in place and realized that we had this little extra part. And just explain, when we took this apart, the bearings were in pieces. There were no ball bearings left. The race was actually melded to the axle protector, and pieces of the bearing were back into the axle. So we had a lot of pieces. This looked like it wasn't part of the bearings, which it isn't, and you can see the little seat on it and the taper. So the other videos we saw, they weren't of the 2015. I think 2014 and 2015 and up has this. Not sure about the 2016. But so this would go on with the taper toward the diff, and there's a little shoulder in there, and it's going to go against this shoulder. So I'm just going to slide that across the splines. To explain how we put the bearing in, because we have the bearing and the race in already. The bearing, we kind of cleaned that inside off with some emery cloth. Set the bearing on. It actually started going in pretty easy until it got about halfway in. Then so we had to stop the video because my wife called while we were shooting the video. But anyways, we bought a socket set, a large socket set, and to get the nut off of the axle, which I think that was a 28 millimeter.
30.
It was a 30 millimeter socket. So we made use of the rest of the socket set. This 36 millimeter socket fits perfect onto here. We just simply, with the race not on, we set that socket on there and we just tapped it on with the hammer. Just a little hint about tapping it on. You want to go counterclockwise is the way it works better for me. You want to go 12, 9, 6, 3, and just keep on tapping. It'll go in place real nice. Set the seal on and easily tap that in also. So we got the seal or the bearing tapped in, the seal tapped in. We put this little piece back on, and now we're going to go ahead and install the. I call this a shaft protector. I'm not a professional mechanic, but this is actually the axle, and this would be the axle protector. So it's just a hollow tube that bolts to the differential. Okay, so now we're going to slide that sleeve over top of the axle. Now we're going back so that it's not lining up with the bolt holes. Once we get past that extra piece of metal, he's going to have to push it past there. Then he's going to twist it 90 degrees so that the bolt holes line up. Now, this again, as far as we can see, is only going to be on the 2015, maybe the 14. You have to do that. Point that extra piece of metal. This extra arm comes back on there, and it's part of the swing arm, and it doesn't look like it was on any of the other videos for the earlier models. Just a hint: make sure that's all cleaned off real well, because once you twist that 90 degrees, if it's not cleaned off, you're going to drag mud, bolt, and dirts into the thread holes, and it'll give you a hard time. So go ahead and start putting the bolts in. Everything seems to be lined up pretty good. I'm sure everybody's seen people screwing bolts in before, so we're going to stop the video and restart it once we get those in. So as you can see, we got all 4 bolts in and torqued down, and we're ready to put the hub back on. It's recommended you put some anti-seize on the splines. We did not have a problem getting the splines off, but apparently some people do because of all the water that gets in there, and it rusts that hub onto the axle. So those splines are going to go on that. This is going to go slide into the bearing, inside the bearing race. And I'm going to tap that in place. Like it's on nice, tight. And then we'll go ahead and put the castle nut on. As you can see, we tried, I didn't have the metric sockets, So we tried tapping the castle nut loose and using an inch and I think it was an 1.25 inch standard socket, which we failed at that, just screwed up the castle nut. That's why we broke down and bought the metric set. But we got the metric set at Harbor Freight at a really good price, so I'm not going to complain about it. And if any of you guys out there are used to doing bearings, you know that you don't tighten a bearing up like this. You snug it up, and then you go ahead and back it off a smidgen so it's a little bit loose. This is not your standard bearing hub. They want you to torque this thing down. So I'm gonna have to get our camera guy to go over and shut this off and lower the jack down a little bit and hold the tire so we can go ahead and snug it up real good, and then we'll turn the video back on. So we went ahead and really torqued that down. I have a very large wrench. I mean, we really got on there pretty good. So it's nice and tight. The last thing you want to do is drop your quarter pin in and with a pair of needle nose just wind that around so the quarter pin doesn't drop off. We're going to go ahead and put the tire on now, bolt that down. That's pretty much it. The only thing I want to point out is if you have one of these Hondas, you probably know that brake drum on the other side is a real catastrophe by Honda. It doesn't work right. It leaks, especially when these kids get in deep water. You'll fill that drum up and start ruining your brakes, and there's a little plunger in there that needs cleaned out. We wanted to get the replacement disc brake by, I think, Super ATV sells it, makes it. I talked to them, and it is not available for 2014 and 2015 Honda Foremans or Honda Ranchers, and this is a Rancher. I don't exactly know why the guy didn't either, because the brake, all the bolt patterns, everything looks the same as the other Foremans, which that's kind of a copy off the Foreman rear end and brake system for the earlier years. But they said it won't work, so we're not going to put it on. But we will do another video. We're going to take that drum off and clean it out, and we can show you that too. So thanks for looking. Hope that helped you.